A big part of my career has been looking at the therapeutic value of the 12 steps because the 12 steps really have harnessed some powerful psychological forces that creates an amazing change in our life. What is that change? Well, the truth is that the 12 steps are engineered to help us achieve emotional sobriety, to achieve true independence of spirit, to achieve autonomy, to learn how to take care of ourselves. These are things that we don't know. Emotional sobriety really helps us learn how to have a healthy relationship, how to have union with the preservation of our integrity, how to cooperate with integrity. Most of us get lost in our relationships. Most of us do a lot of things we don't want to do. We don't really know how to show up in a good way. Emotional sobriety is about learning to have healthy relationships. I'm going to turn this over to Roger. We are discussing, right? Discovering novel solutions to our dilemmas, to the problems that we face in our life. And so, Roger, I'll hand over the workshop.
Thank you, Alan. It dawned on me as you were mentioning crippling expectations that one way in which our expectations can be crippling to us is that it interferes greatly with our ability to find novel solutions. And what's the connection? Well, for me, it's that if my expectations are strong enough, them not being met generates a whole host of emotions inside of me. Frustration, annoyance, anger, or maybe discouragement, depression. And those emotions are a very powerful force, and I'll be talking about this tonight, interrupting our ability to find solutions, especially new solutions, novel solutions to our struggles and our areas of difficulty in our life. So, as Alan said, tonight we're continuing our discussion of discovering novel solutions. One of the most important things I want to say tonight, and you've often heard me say this if you've been here with us for a while, please don't take anything I say to you tonight as yet one more should, or one more ought to, or one more rule for yourself and others. If an idea or exercise I describe here seems to you like it might have value for you, I urge you to try it out, to try it on, and find out for yourself through your own experience whether it works for you or not. We are each unique. My solutions may not be your solutions, and vice versa. So hold what you hear me say tonight lightly, flexibly. Remember what we're talking about here, showing flexibility so that we can respond to what's happening in this moment, in this situation, more effectively, in a way that nourishes us and hopefully nourishes others as well. I think of this as surrendering to reality, which you just heard Kathy giving expression to. I think of it as learning how to surrender to reality, which we all know, if reality is not the way we want it to be, can be very, very difficult. That means learning to ask myself questions like, what is in this situation, and what is this situation, this moment, demanding of me, asking for from me? I want to say that again. What is this situation that I'm facing right now, in this moment, demanding of me or asking for from me? It's a very powerful question to begin asking ourselves, to begin to unhook our own demands and expectations. I'd like to start with an exercise to help you have an experience of your own relationship to discovering new solutions or novel solutions. I want each of you to take a few moments to recall a specific time when you discovered and put into practice a new solution, new for you, to a problem relating to your emotional sobriety. When you found a way, or perhaps your sense was that you received a way, or a way came to you of responding that was more effective than the way you had been responding to that person or that situation before. So reflect on that for a minute. When do I feel like I have made at least a bit of progress at a particular situation or moment in my life with regard to my emotional sobriety, where I was able to put into practice some learning about emotional sobriety? A couple examples would be perhaps you responded with openness and receptivity to a person or a situation or a criticism, rather than defensiveness and aggressiveness. Or perhaps you overcame a fear and expressed yourself in a situation when you normally would have remained quiet. So think of a personal example of finding your own solution and trying something different. At the level of your process, how did you feel when engaging in this novel solution? And at the level of outcomes, what were the consequences of what you tried, both in the outside world and in your inner world? So process is your ongoing experience, including emotional experience, thoughts, and so on, as something's happening. And outcome is what it says. It's what came out of that in terms of consequences. Do you have any sense of what generated or motivated this different response from you in this particular situation? Was it being tired of how you experienced both the process and consequences resulting from your old ways of responding? Was it through the helpful influence of another person? Or perhaps through something you read or heard that prompted a new idea? Was it surrendering to the guidance of your higher power? Or something else entirely for you? So I want you to reflect on that aspect of this novel solution for yourself as well. This can also be applied to more general changes that you feel like you've made or that you have made in your life, where you have consistently, not just in one instance, like I was asking you to think about, but you have kind of reworked yourself. You have found a more general solution across a lot of situations that you're able to practice now, compared to your habitual pattern. I believe each one of us already has knowledge about finding novel solutions, about trying something different. And if we know this about ourselves, it can give us hope and can help us believe in our ability to find additional novel solutions. I think the first step in discovering new solutions is to expand awareness of our prior learnings, our limiting beliefs and habits we have formed that obstruct our ability to find more effective and creative solutions in life. Alan spoke last week of the idea that the healthy person is a person with little or no personality. And he explained what he meant by that. It's a person with psychological and behavioral flexibility to effectively respond in a way that the present situation is calling for. The American Psychological Association defines personality as enduring characteristics and behavior that comprise a person's unique adjustments to life. So that's what we're talking about. Enduring, happening over time, consistent most of the time over time. That comprise a person's unique adjustments, what we call often coping styles or coping mechanisms, including major traits, interests, drives, values, self-concept, ability, emotional patterns. A lot of different things go into what we think of as personality. Examples can include defensiveness, aggressiveness, passivity, withdrawal, being placating in our behavior. So reflect on that for a minute. Even though all of us will inhabit many different personality traits and characteristics in the course of a given day, are there kind of typical ways of reacting or responding, especially if you're stressed or anxious, that you realize that you're prone to? And maybe you even have gotten feedback from other people that you're prone to. So that's the sense in which Alan's talking about letting go of our pre-existing personality, our pre-existing psychological and behavioral tendencies, and developing greater flexibility. Becoming aware of our existing patterns requires a decision to be more curious about what those patterns are. It requires courage to be honest with ourselves, to be willing at times to ask for and be open to feedback from other people, and to reflect on what we find and what we hear. We learn by cultivating awareness and by daily practice, many times daily, devoted to recognizing our emotional triggers, becoming more aware of our habitual ways of responding, and most important of all, to practice pausing, hitting the pause button, to still our mouths, our vocal cords, and our behavior. To create a space, as Alan described it last week, between stimulus and response, which also means a space between the activating and triggering situation and our impulse to react, which might come immediately, and our actual reaction. That's where the pause will often come in. We know this is not easy to learn, especially when we are strongly emotionally triggered or activated. But we can and do all make progress with this if we are committed to doing so. It can help to realize that our brains have remarkable capabilities to find new solutions to problems and to help us change. We just get so preoccupied. I love that word because to me it describes exactly how my psychological space feels when I'm feeling an emotion intensely or I'm obsessed with something mentally. We get so preoccupied by our limiting beliefs and thoughts and feelings that there's no room for our two brain hemispheres that Alan describes in some detail in this chapter to cooperate in helping us find solutions. He talks about paradoxes involved in combining the different functions to some degree of our left and right hemispheres in our brain. As he talks about these as paradoxes that help integrate both hemispheres. Examples of these include learning to be curious and at the same time being as present as possible with what is. And I would add contextually present. Present in terms of my senses, my vision, my hearing, my touch, and so on, but also aware of context, aware of the situation that I'm in. It can also mean being serious while having a sense of humor, or being active while also being passive and receptive. And he adds, with a sense of wonderment about life, a sense of mystery about life, and so on. I urge you to each to be open to the possibility that our brains have much more capability to address and to solve problems we run into in our life than most of us believe they do. That we each have more capability to find novel and effective solutions to our problems than we tend to believe that we do. In this chapter, Alan talks about obstacles to being able to discover novel solutions in the personal example that he gives. One of these is the obstacle of blaming ourselves when things don't go our way, when reality isn't going the way we want it to go, or blaming others. He doesn't mention that specifically, but you've heard us talk a lot about that. Another major obstacle to being able to accept and find solutions and be present to the situation as it is our emotional reactions to that situation. As I said before, and a couple of weeks ago, one of you requested in the chat that I talk more about, gosh, how can I do better at controlling my really problematic, really intense emotions? And I'll have some things to say about that in a couple of minutes. If you don't think you have the ability to successfully regulate feelings, I ask you this question. How many times today did you feel even a slight bit of anxiety or annoyance or impatience or frustration or sadness or excitement, but you didn't express it verbally and you didn't express it through your behavior. If you're like me, it's too many times to count in the course of the day, right? I'm a pretty emotional guy. That might not be true for you, but I suspect for many of us it is. So I want us to be aware of that. We engage in the process of regulating our emotional responses all day, all the time. So much as I said about we do have and have experience with capability of finding new solutions in the area of emotional sobriety, we also have capabilities in the area of emotional regulation. Part of the challenge is how to extend those to the areas where we don't yet have good regulation of our anger, of our fear, of our depression, and so on. The point I want to make is we do already know a lot about that. And of course, we can all learn more. But what makes our emotional reactions so powerful within us, so intense that they can take possession of us, directing our words and actions if we don't know how to stop that process? How is it that they can sabotage our ability to make wise choices? When we feel frustrated in our efforts to do something we want or to have something we want, or we perceive that we or someone or something we care about is being psychologically or physically threatened, we are wired through hundreds of thousands of years of Homo sapiens evolution to react with fight, flight, or freeze responses. Emotions like fear and anger generate very powerful impulses to move, to take action. In fact, the Latin root of the word emotion, emovere, means outward movement or energy in motion. So anger is an example. When I'm really angry and it's instantaneous, I want to aggress, right? I want to move forward. I want to, at the most simple level, I want to attack. I want to hit or kick or bite or whatever it is. So I'll breathe deeply. I'll energize my musculature in my body, and I'll want to aggress with all of my what are called striate muscles. Emotion wants us to move. Fear wants us to move. The fear reaction is an exception to that, but that's still another type of reaction. So that's one of the difficulties with containing our feelings. They don't want to be contained. They want to be expressed. They want us to engage in movement, or at the very least with words, right, that are going to express them. Another aspect of this is when we sense our physical or psychological safety is threatened, we want to eliminate or neutralize the source of that threat, as I was just saying, or flee from it. Or other strategies we can use as well, like trying to placate. The biggest problem for us as humans compared to the rest of the animal kingdom is we react to perceived psychological threats in precisely the same way we react to actual physical threats to our safety. We react with the same neurological, hormonal, and vascular and other body responses that actual danger, physical danger, would generate in us. The biologist and neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky writes about this in his books, one of which is called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. All right. And the other one is a great book called Behave. That's the title of the book. But it's all about the complexities of human emotion and our stress response and human behavior. And that's not the worst of it, that we react to perceived psychological stressors regarding events, situations, and other people. We don't even need to have an externally perceived threat, whether it be psychological or physical, to activate our stress hormones, our anger responses, and so on. Our own thoughts, our memories, our imaginings, our fantasies, all can and do generate exactly the same hormonal and physiological stress responses that actual physical threat generates in us. But here's what can give us hope. So really hear this part, because that sounds pretty challenging, right? If you look at it just from that piece. Some neuroscientists call it the reptilian brain piece of us. But fortunately, there's more to our brain than, the base of our brain, the primitive, earliest part of our brain. Almost always, our emotions are the result of the meaning or interpretation that we give to what we're perceiving in the world. I want to say that again. Except for those automatic reactions that are not mediated by our forebrain and our cerebral cortex and our reasoning, that just happen instantly and automatically, like somebody swerves toward us on the freeway. But those kinds of emotional experiences where we might feel anger or fear and so on in the moments after that happens, those happen very rarely in our life compared to all the other times we feel emotions in our life, right? So almost always our emotions are the result of the meaning or the interpretation that we give to the person or the situation that we're perceiving. Do I see this person as a safe person, psychologically or physically, or not safe? And do I feel threatened by them? Or do I feel like they're safe in some ways, but not in others? Is life or are other people violating my rules about how life should be or how other people should be? Is the person responding negatively or positively to my needs for love and acceptance and belonging? Are they letting me control them if I want to do so? Are they not letting me manipulate them? And so on. If we understand that our emotional reactions are determined by the meaning that we are giving to what we are seeing, a huge tool is given to us about how to begin to change our emotional reactions. We change our beliefs and our perceptions of the meaning of their behavior. Now, what does that mean? Well, it can mean learning to identify and let go of all of our shoulds. It means a lot of the things you've been hearing us talk about for years now, if you've been attending these meetings. It means letting go of many of our rules of behavior for ourselves and others that don't work. It means practicing ideas like the problem is not the problem. My response to the problem I'm perceiving is the real problem. And how can I introduce more flexibility? It means when I'm taking things personally, to be able to, if I can, take 2 or 3 slow breaths, another very valuable tool for regulating our emotions better. Walking away for a little bit can be another one if my emotions have surged into control of me at a certain time. But reminding myself, if I'm taking things personally, that this other person's behavior probably has little to do with me. And even if it does, there may be important things in what they're saying to me for me to look at. Another one is to begin to treat situations that annoy the heck out of us or cause us anxiety, to really begin to perceive them as learning opportunities for our own growth. None of these things are easy, but they all involve changes in the way we think about and the beliefs we have about life, about ourselves, and about other people. One key to being able to find new solutions is to make a conscious decision, a choice, to grow in our emotional sobriety on a daily basis. Reminding, I like to break that word up, reminding ourselves of that purpose and intention throughout our day. I will set reminders on my phone as kind of like the gong or the bell for that Buddhists use to call it a call to awareness. I'll use notifications on my phone sometimes just as calls to awareness, to take a moment to breathe, to take a moment to try to recenter myself in the course of my day. Of course, some days I do much better than others. I can also ask myself questions as I make a conscious decision to foster and support my emotional sobriety and my ability to find novel solutions in my day. What spiritual or psychological principle could I seek to align myself with right now that will better serve me and those I care about, such as thy will, not my will, or reciting the serenity prayer, or perhaps a psychological mantra, such as I have a right to stand up for myself, and that doesn't mean standing against others, as you've heard Alan say a number of times. If I keep these thoughts close to my consciousness through much of my day, I'll do a much better job at holding on to my emotional center of gravity through the course of my day, and will be much less likely to be thrown emotionally off balance by events and situations that occur. I'm going to shorten some things up here. A few more practical suggestions around regulating our feelings better and finding novel solutions. One of the best strategies for regulating my feelings is one Alan mentioned last week. Doing my best to cultivate a consciousness that stays aware that I am many people. However strong or intense an emotion is, and however strongly, or a belief, or a thought, or an obsession, or whatever it may be, not just feelings, there is always much more to who I am. No matter in that moment, if I feel like that emotion is 110% of me, there is always far more to who I am, even in that moment, than I'm feeling like there is. If I know that, and I can connect with that, it can help me open the door to those other parts, to be aware of those other parts. Another practice with emotional sobriety and emotional regulation is to start practicing with people in situations that aren't the worst imaginable tests for us, right? To build our capability with time. Another strategy is, as I said, to be more aware of our body and to learn, because as I mentioned, body expression is a big part of emotional expression, but also emotional experience. To learn to breathe several slow breaths and especially breathe out, emphasizing the exhale. That's what encourages what's called the relaxation response in our body. So there are things we can do physically to help ourselves create that pause space where we can use both our creativity and our imagine and our ability to consider consequences and think things through to create a space for both of our hemispheres to get involved in our problem solving. A couple of things about finding novel solutions. Reaching out to others and being willing to show willingness to initiate reaching out to others rather than just hoping they will offer is a huge support for finding new solutions. Not necessarily because they're going to give us new solutions, but just through talking about their own experiences. Often we learn a lot from metaphor. We learn a lot by reading poetry, reading novels, even watching TV and watching movies if it's a good script, right? We learn a lot because we tend to put ourselves into any situation we're reading about. We put ourselves into stories other people we hear other people telling. It's a natural human tendency. We can learn a lot by asking other people, by listening to stories, and by listening to what other people share with us. As I mentioned a minute ago, we can also learn a lot by beginning to see problems and opportunities, as opportunities rather. rather than just insurmountable obstacles. And to finish with, we're not going to do this now, but it's something I want you to think about. I want you to think about a problem you're currently facing. And I want you to think about how you might typically respond to that problem and how you're tempted to respond to it now. Could be a relationship problem, but something involving emotional sobriety for you, right? And I want you to think about two new novel options for you as ways that you might approach solving that problem. I had a whole process to go through with it, but I don't have time. But generate two possible solutions that you've not tried before in your life, and try one of them. And after you tried it, maybe thought about ways to vary it if it wasn't as effective as you wanted, even if it worked, next time the situation happens in a few weeks or a few days or a few hours, try your second solution. It may work even better. And then assess those solutions after you've tried them, so you can fine tune them or try a new one altogether. So thank you all very much for listening, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues now.
Okay. I think we'll be joined in a second here by Tom, and I know Herb is here. I saw him in the room. There's Tom. Nice colored shirt, Tom. I like that color on you. Herb, good evening.
Teal, or something like teal. Hey, Herb. Hi, Tom. Welcome, you guys.
I'm hitting the button.
We can't control others.
But we can have influence, and Tom is doing his best to have some influence right now.
But you know, Herb looks very content with being muted. I mean, he really does. He seems. I don't think
you can't shut
me up.
I didn't say I was going to say. I was just going to say he looks like he's content with himself. Yeah.
No.
I got a new computer set up and my cursor wasn't working quite well.
Thoughts, guys? I'd love to hear them.
Well, first of all, Chet, you said everything I had planned. I had written it down here. I had all that to say, and so you got to it first. I just want to add a very specific thing that I think that because it's something that is occurring to me as you're talking about this, Roger, and it's something that's been brought to my attention. It was a client recently, and that is, we'll just start with saying, you know, you're saying, think of an examples of some novel solutions, things you can do. We need to remember that novel often equals scary. And and the idea is, if we're not careful, when, you know, and this is when you, like when you said, I think it's really a good thing for us to remember that our brain, our human brain has not evolved very much in the last, you know, tens of thousands of years. So we do in fact get the same response to something that we scare ourselves with inside as we do to the bear at the door or the tiger chasing us, trying to have us for dinner. It's like, and I just want to toss in an idea of a book I read recently by a woman named Catherine Pittman, and it's called Taming the Amygdala. It's like, it's a wonderful book. She has, with a co-author, and I can't remember her name, she has another book called 50 Ways to Rewire Your Brain. But for anybody who has anxiety stuff, it's very practical stuff, but it also is really great explanation about how this works in your brain. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, when somebody can explain how something happens, how it works, it's just one more, to me, it's one more element of self-compassion, because when they're what I'm learning is, you're not unusual, Tom. This is normal. What you're experiencing, we can explain. And so anyway, but I'll just say what I recently realized, working with a client I have that just works really hard in therapy. And of late, she's been telling me that she thought she was really backsliding. And it was a little confusing for me because she didn't seem to be backsliding to me. But, you know, that's not ultimately up to me, but I won't go into the details because it's more complicated. But ultimately, what I figured out is that well, she was coming out of each of our recent sessions and feeling bad, and she was having a hard time. And what she didn't realize is, I'm giving you the thumbnail version of this. What she didn't realize is the reason she was feeling bad was because she was doing good, because she was working really hard and taking chances in our sessions that she hadn't been willing to take, hadn't been able to take in the past. So we were doing some more experiential exercises and stuff. And so these are everything we're doing when you're working on an experiential therapy like that is novel. It's new, and it's going to scare the crap out of you. It's like and so one of the things that I hope I'm helping with her with now at this point is realizing that being uncomfortable, being in all the way from being in pain or being uncomfortable after a session is not, I'm not wishing that on somebody, but it is part of our growth. And it's like we it's a weird thing because we're actually showing up wanting to get outside of our comfort zone, because our comfort zone is where we safely just have lived. And so we need to be able to do that. So I just want to say that I mean, lots of notes about it, but I just want to say basically, just remember that when you start to change, when you find these novel solutions, when you're doing new things, if I remember in one of my books, I put that it's not going to feel like, you're not going to feel like doing an end zone dance. You're not going to feel like celebrating most of the time. The word that comes up with most clients who are going through that process is weird. This feels weird. And I've learned to listen for that word. And when I do, rather than, go, oh, I hope something's not wrong, to think, no, probably something is right. It's weird because it's unfamiliar. And so one of the things that I'm working with this client is two things. One of them has to do with interpretation of what's happening. What you talked about, Roger, is one is you got to hang in there with those feelings. When you talked about somebody saying, how do we control our feelings? Of course, one of the things that working on with her and working on with us, we work on a lot of people is like, well, you don't control your feelings. You control your feelings by not controlling your feelings. You accept your feelings. And we need help with that. I get that, but it's like, to understand that we don't need to judge our feelings. But the other piece is to actually be able to interpret, and this is a big deal, and it's going to be a big stretch for this client I'm working with. It's to be able to interpret a significant amount of the discomfort and difficulties she's having as signs of progress. She needs to, it's like I'm telling her it's a compliment. It's like what your system is telling you is you're getting this right. Your fight or flight has been, you have ducked and covered and ran, whether literally or internally, forever, for long years and years and years. And right now you're not doing that. She's trusting the process enough. She's trusting me enough to where she's sitting there and doing that. So that's it. I just want to say, when you're trying novel solutions, remember it's scary. When you're trying new things, it's a part of all of our recovery, and it happens. And I remember when I first did it with initial alcoholism recovery, but 38 years into recovery, there's still new stuff. Now I'm working on growing edge is a different thing. So there's another place where there's new things to work on, and they're going to be scary. And I need to remember that's what, ironically, or that's what I'm looking, that's what I'm seeking. So, celebrate your discomfort, I guess, is what I'm saying.
A quick one, and then I'll let Herb go. Mine is the key word to everything you said, Roger, is taking an attitude of experimentation.
Yep.
That's the key. That's the emphasis in this chapter, is that, you know, to discover something new means to experiment.
Mhm.
And experiment means to go out of what you're comfortable with, as Tom was just saying. You know, you'll hear rooms a lot of times, do the opposite, right? Do the opposite.
Mhm.
Try on the opposite. I mean, that's a very good rule of thumb, is imagine yourself like just try tonight, if you, or tomorrow morning when you get up and you go to put your shirt on. If you put your right hand through the sleeve first, try your left hand and see what that experience is with you.
Mm.
We become so habitual, and when we become habitual, that becomes what is comfortable for us.
Right.
And it's very important here that we are able to push that zone of our comfort, right? We've got to endure some discomfort.
That's it.
It's the bottom line here. We're not going to be able to do this and still feel comfortable. And that's what this whole thing is about, is enduring it. And the endurance, I've found, if you can see the meaning in what you're doing, it helps you endure the situation.
Yeah.
Like, I've had a lot of grief this last year over some of the losses that I've experienced, you know, in many ways, you know, and, you know, I kept going into that, and I was kept getting reminded that the loss is always going to be there, but the one thing you can get out of this would be wisdom. And that's what I kept looking for in this thing, is how can I increase my wisdom from the discomfort and pain I'm feeling? So that's the goal here, is to really have an attitude of experimentation. And as Tom was reminding us, is to be able to endure that discomfort and have faith that that discomfort is going to lead you to a better place.
Yeah.
To discover novel solutions, and it will happen. I mean, and like you said, Roger, we got to let go of some of the, when we start berating ourselves or someone else, you know, we all totally lose any possibility to pay attention to the field and what's going on. And
Yeah.
I'll talk about that more when I go on, is
Yeah.
what by paying attention to the field. But that's where you're going to discover that new solution, is seeing what's around you and
Yeah.
looking at it from a different perspective. So enough said for me. I'll turn it over to her.
Hi, my name is Herb. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much, everybody, for your comments. Roger, you always over prepare. Is wonderful, because you got a lot of margin and a lot of background. The whole concept in the 12-step process, which is where I come from, in terms of both my understanding and my experience of human development, is about change. That's what we're talking about. And my exposure and experience to people is, nobody likes change, because I think it was Tom who said that it's just scary to change. And the things that really helped me, of course, was getting really clear, like Alan just talked about. What's the motive? What is my motive? What am I hoping for? What do I expect? What do I hope for in terms of an alternative to whatever it is I'm experiencing now?
Yeah.
And that's where that set aside attitude comes in. I don't say set aside prayer anymore. That set aside attitude. I don't know that I don't know, and I can't see that I don't see. And I didn't even know that until I began with a willingness. The key for me in all of this, keeping it really, really, I've got lots of words. Everybody here's got lots of words, is the willingness.
Yep.
Just and then to have somebody that is credible, that will be a guide, an accountability partner, a sounding board for this. And they encouraged me, every one of them, step outside the box, do stretch, get beyond reason. I didn't know really what they were talking about, because I'm so sheltered by my reason. And yet when I pushed it, I found that I could in fact step outside the box. It's kind of a catch-22. Now, in the 12-step culture, of course, the underlying assumption is that I don't have the choice. I'm powerless, literally over my addiction, but I'm also powerless over managing my life. That has so many implications. And yet, at the end of the 4th step, and at the end, certainly, of the 9th step, we're completely confronted with, oh, you don't have a choice, and oh, you're powerless, but you're 100% responsible for your behavior, for your thoughts, for your feelings, and for the outcome of your life. My God, that's so bad news for most people. Oh, no. Yeah, really, seriously, it's so much. And yet, as soon as they begin to accept that my behavior and its outcome is my responsibility 100%, all of the stuff that everybody talks about in terms of self-help is all wonderful.
Yeah.
I have come to grips with a responsibility and then an accountability, and then connecting to a life force that I don't really understand, but I believe with all my heart is there, and I act as if it's true. And Dan Siegel said it the best. He's a psychiatrist at UCLA, talks about brain stuff. Knowledge does not change us. Feelings do not change us permanently. What changes us, what changes our brain, is behavior. It doesn't matter what you know, and it doesn't matter what you feel. Behave differently, and you will think and feel differently over time.
Yeah.
So that takes trust in the person who's guiding you. So,
Yep.
Lots of moving parts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also synonymous with behaviors experience. See, we learn through experience and new experiences. So that's the other thing to see,
Yeah.
think of behavior as just doing. It's also an experience of what you're doing. There has to be a consciousness with it. It's not just doing. If you do it unconsciously, then you're back to being an automaton again. If you do it because you're supposed to, then it's not going to be the same thing as if you're doing it and you're present in experiencing what you're doing. And every one of us have experienced recovery as an experience. And that's powerful. Experience changes us, right? Ideas are wonderful, right? They can create possibilities, but we've got to plug it in and integrate it, as you said, Herb. Ideas here are great, but they got to get down here, right? Yep. Wonderful discussion tonight, gentlemen. There's a few announcements we want to make, and the first one is I'm happy to say that the second emotional sobriety workshop at the Wilson House is going to be in November. And they've got the dates. It's the week before Thanksgiving. We know it might be a tough time for people, but it's also might be a good time. So please come and join us up in Dorset, Vermont. Herb and I have a workshop coming up here soon. So Tom, you have that posted in the and then Tom Potash and I have a workshop in Doylestown. So we've got some great stuff. And Herb's got a retreat coming up as
This
well.
weekend, yeah.
That's right. And that information is going to be posted. So there's a lot of fun things. And there is already planning taking place for the next Reimagining Recovery Conference that took place in London this year. It's going to be in Dublin, Ireland. And that's because there's probably more alcoholics that are Irish than any other. We thought we'd go right to the source, right? Source. There's an old.
That's in the towards the end of May.
Yeah,
It's the Memorial Day weekend.
it is. That's right. Have you heard that old joke that if you took all the Irish out of AA, we could all meet in a little phone booth? Well, they don't have this anymore, so I don't know where we'd meet, but there used to be a phone booth.
Does someone need to believe in God to successfully overcome addiction? Well, the way I like to think about what the program does, it connects us to who we really are. And what does that mean? Well, there's this incredible force in you and I, this growth force. It's the force that moved us from crawling to walking. You wanted to take those first steps. And when you fell, and you fell a lot of times, you didn't let your failures stop you. You picked yourself up, you learned from it. And how many times did you fail before you walked? You failed as many times as you needed to. You see that force, I call it a biological imperative, a psychological imperative, a spiritual imperative. It's moving you towards wholeness. It's moving you to be what you can be. Just like in the acorn is all the information it needs to become an oak tree. In you is all the information you need to become you. Become a you that can cope with life and to deal with whatever you need to deal with to be okay. And that's what I'll talk about in my new book, The 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety.